In a moment no one saw coming, Princess Anne stunned the nation by breaking royal silence and directly casting doubt on King Charles's ability to reign. Her words weren't vague. They were sharp, personal, and impossible to ignore. For the monarchy, this wasn't a statement. It was a warning. The bombshell at the banquet. Anne breaks royal code.
On the evening of September 12, 2025, inside the marbled halls of a modest charity banquet in Bath, something happened that shattered decades of royal discipline.
Princess Anne, the famously tight-lipped and traditionally unwavering daughter of Queen Elizabeth II, took to the podium with what guests assumed would be another polite, rehearsed royal address. But what followed would ignite national grief, global headlines, and a crisis inside the crown itself. Speaking without notes, she looked directly at the crowd and delivered a sentence no one expected. "I never truly loved Diana." A gasp rippled through the room. Utensils dropped, jaws clenched, cameras froze. No royal, especially Anne, had ever dared speak Diana's name like that, and certainly not with such raw finality. It wasn't just what she said. It was how she said it. Calm, reflective, almost weary, like someone carrying a truth buried for too long. And yet, no one could look away. For over 5 decades, Princess Anne had been the monarchy's iron wall, stoic, dutiful, and emotionally impenetrable. But this night, for reasons still unknown, she abandoned the royal script entirely. "Duty is not always love," she added softly, "and silence for many years has been my only way of surviving." Guests sat frozen. Some stared, some blinked away tears. Others whispered, unsure if they were witnessing a royal meltdown or a historic reckoning. What should have been a quiet fundraising dinner had become a national rupture. Anne's unscripted moment set off a media firestorm before dessert was even served. By midnight, every major outlet was airing clips of the speech. By morning, front pages across the UK, Canada, and Australia screamed in bold, "Anne, I never loved Diana." Princess drops bombshell. Royal silence broken. The palace offered no immediate comment, fueling even more confusion. Was this planned? Was it sanctioned? Or was Anne acting alone? But deeper questions simmered beneath the surface. Why now? Why Diana? Why break silence after all this time? The monarchy, already under pressure from recent scandals and waning public trust, suddenly had to revisit a ghost it had tried for years to bury. And Princess Anne, once seen as the unbreakable royal machine, had cracked, not with rage, not with scandal, but with truth. It was the beginning of something seismic, and the end of something sacred. Because the next morning, as the media unpacked Anne's words, the nation realized this wasn't just a confession. It was a warning, and it had only just begun. Behind Anne's words, a lifetime of repressed emotion. The morning after the banquet bombshell, royal insiders, historians, and commentators scrambled to explain why the most private royal had gone public with something so emotionally explosive. But those who knew Princess Anne well weren't surprised by the timing, only by the truth she finally chose to reveal. "She's been holding back for years," said a retired palace aide. "This wasn't impulsive. This was a lifetime of restraint collapsing all at once." Born in 1950, Anne had been raised under the rule of Queen Elizabeth, in a family where emotion was policed and personal pain was hidden behind protocol. From childhood, She was taught to walk behind duty, to speak only when spoken to, and to never express weakness. Now, at 75, she was finally admitting the cost. "Silence is a jail," Anne said that night, a line now etched across social media like a royal confession. "I did what I was told. I suppressed, I obeyed, I endured, and it turned me into someone I didn't always recognize." Those words carried decades of grief. Much of it tied not just to Diana, but to the culture of coldness that engulfed the royal household. The idea that love was a private inconvenience, and emotional truth a threat to the crown. Anne's confession painted her not as a villain, but as a prisoner in a palace. Someone who chose loyalty over love, and now wonders if it was ever worth it. Suddenly, the phrase, "the hardest-working royal," didn't sound noble. It sounded tragic. She's seen as strong, but that strength came at the cost of connection, a royal historian noted on BBC Radio 4. This speech was a reckoning, not just with Diana, but with herself. For the first time, the public saw Anne's stiff upper lip as scar tissue, not resilience. And in that vulnerability, Anne shifted the tone of the entire institution. What began as a shocking statement was quickly becoming a referendum on royal identity. What do we ask of those born into duty? What do they lose when they serve without space for humanity? Anne's words opened a door, and through that door came grief, guilt, and ghosts the monarchy had long sealed off. But most importantly, it reopened a wound the public never truly healed from: Diana. And as the public turned back to her memory, the royal family's most painful chapter was about to be reopened, live and in full view of the world. The unraveling had started, and no one, not even a king, could stop what came next. Diana revisited, old wounds reopened. It took less than 24 hours for Princess Anne's confession to awaken a sleeping grief the monarchy hoped would stay buried. Diana's name, once cautiously tiptoed around in official circles, was now roaring back into headlines, front pages, and living rooms across the globe. The reaction wasn't subtle. Outside Kensington Palace, mourners began arriving by the dozens. Then the hundreds. Within 2 days, thousands gathered, laying flowers, lighting candles, taping handwritten letters to the palace gates. Messages read, "We never forgot you. The people's princess lives on. She deserved love, not silence." It felt like 1997 all over again. News outlets even began replaying archival footage, the slow procession of Diana's casket through London, the unforgettable sight of William and Harry, heads bowed, walking behind their mother's coffin. That image, once frozen in time, now resurfaced with new meaning. "Anne's words reopened a scar," said one royal commentator. "This isn't about one sentence, it's about decades of emotional abandonment." The British public, already wary of Queen Camilla, now viewed the monarchy through a darker lens, not as protectors of tradition, but enforcers of suppression. The media pounced. Panel shows debated. Did Anne just confirm what Diana always said? Was the firm always this cold, or did it just choose to stay that way? For Prince William and Prince Harry, Anne's revelation felt like an earthquake. Though neither made a public statement, sources close to both brothers said they were blindsided. "It reopened everything," said a friend of Harry's. The funeral, the silence, the years of pretending to be okay. And for William, it was worse. He was now caught in a media frenzy that dragged his late mother, his aunt, and his father's fitness to reign into one unforgiving spotlight. Even palace insiders admitted Anne's sentence may have broken a sacred line, the unspoken rule that Diana's legacy is untouchable, or at least protected. But now, the wound was open, and the public wasn't just grieving Diana again, they were angry. Buckingham in crisis. Deafening silence from the palace. In typical royal fashion, the first response from Buckingham Palace was minimal, cold, polished, and completely inadequate. A 14-word statement was released through official channels. It read, "The Princess Royal's comments reflect personal reflection and will not be publicly addressed." No apology, no clarification, no context. Behind the scenes, all hell broke loose. At 1:12 a.m., Palace sources reported that senior aides, legal advisors, and communications staff were summoned to an emergency strategy meeting at Clarence House. The Queen's spontaneous confession had caught the entire institution off guard. No vetting, no approval, no warning. "It's not just what she said," one insider whispered. "It's who she shook when she said it. The ghost of Diana and the reign of Charles." With Anne's words still echoing across global headlines, pressure mounted on King Charles, whose already fragile approval rating dipped 14% overnight. His failed marriage to Diana was now under fresh public scrutiny, not as a personal tragedy, but as a mark of leadership failure. And Camilla? She vanished completely from the public eye. Her scheduled appearance at a charity gala on September 15th was abruptly cancelled due to unforeseen scheduling conflicts. No one believed it. "This isn't a scheduling issue," said a veteran royal correspondent. "This is damage control." Meanwhile, William and Harry remained silent, officially. But insiders close to both camps said communication between the brothers was tense, if happening at all. William feels exposed, a palace aide revealed. Harry feels vindicated. That contrast was deeply dangerous for the monarchy, because what Anne did wasn't just emotional, it was political. It challenged the very narrative Buckingham had spent 25 years rebuilding. That Diana's death had been mourned, learned from, and moved beyond. Now, the illusion of healing had shattered, and within palace walls, every corridor whispered the same question. Did Anne just bring the whole thing down? The royal family had faced scandal before, but this time the fire was lit from within. And the king, once thought untouchable, now stood directly in the flames. The Diana-Anne dichotomy. Two women, one cold institution. For decades, Princess Diana and Princess Anne were compared quietly behind closed palace doors. Two women living under the same roof, but on opposite emotional planets. Now, in the wake of Anne's shocking confession, that contrast wasn't just resurfacing, it was exploding into public view. Diana was warmth, light, affection in full view of the world. She was known for hugging children, crying openly, touching the untouchable. Her heart was her power. Anne, in contrast, was precision, cold steel, a royal engine that never broke pace. She gave few interviews, avoided gossip, and almost never smiled unless the camera forced her to. Diana bled in public, a royal historian noted on Sky News. Anne never even showed a paper cut. The two women never got along. And now Anne had admitted that publicly, stating she never truly loved Diana, a sentence that sliced through royal tradition like a blade. For years, insiders hinted at the tension. Anne viewed Diana as too emotional, too needy, and too much of a show. Diana, in return, reportedly saw Anne as cold, dismissive, and painfully out of touch with the people. They were more than opposites. They were symbols of the monarchy's internal war. Image versus intimacy, control versus compassion. And in the aftermath of Anne's speech, public reaction made one thing very clear. The people had always chosen Diana. "It's sad," said a woman interviewed outside Kensington Palace. "Diana made us feel like we belonged. Anne reminds us that we never did." Social media exploded with side-by-side clips. Diana hugging AIDS patients. Anne politely shaking hands at a military inspection. Diana dancing with the public. Anne marching past them. The message? One connected. One complied. And now, Anne's decades of silence, once seen as dignity, were being reinterpreted as cruelty. Her confession wasn't healing the family's image, it was cracking it open. For many royal watchers, it was the final proof that the institution never truly embraced Diana, not in life, not in death, and not in memory. And at the center of that failure, whether she meant to or not, stood Anne. But it wasn't just her legacy at risk now, it was the king's. King Charles under fire. Fitness to reign in question. When Princess Anne stood before that banquet crowd and broke royal protocol, she didn't just disturb old memories, she stirred new doubts about the future. Her words, whether planned or subconscious, sent a clear signal to the inner circle. Charles can't hold this together anymore. And just like that, a question long whispered in elite political spaces became national conversation. Is King Charles III still fit to reign? For a monarch already battling public skepticism, health rumors, and a deeply divided family, Anne's timing felt deliberate, strategic, or perhaps inevitable. She didn't say it directly, said one political analyst, but the implication was brutal. If Anne doesn't believe in the past, how can she support the present? Inside the palace, the pressure mounted. Loyalists were scrambling. Ministers began quietly inquiring about succession procedures. Should Charles step aside for health or personal reasons? And then came the headlines. Anne's words signal no confidence. Queen's daughter, king's undoing. Public support for Charles and Camilla began crumbling in real time. Polls released by The Guardian showed a 12-point drop in favorability for Charles and a staggering 29-point collapse for Camilla, who was now completely absent from public view. The phrase "soft abdication" began trending online. Commentators debated whether Prince William was already being prepared behind the scenes to assume greater power. Meanwhile, Camilla, already fragile in public standing, had become toxic overnight. Anne's speech didn't just burn bridges, a royal staffer told The Times. It burned the whole blueprint. In trying to clear her own emotional truth, Anne had indirectly shaken the very throne her brother sat upon. And Charles? According to insiders, he was furious. But more than that, he was broken. "He hasn't been seen smiling in weeks," said one longtime valet. "It's like the crown's gotten heavier on his head since the banquet." The king, once seen as the steady hand after Elizabeth's reign, now looked like a man fighting ghosts on all sides. Diana's memory, Anne's judgment, and a public growing colder by the day. What began as a sister speaking from the heart had now created a royal crisis with no clear end. And for the first time in his short reign, King Charles wasn't just questioned. He was no longer respected. William's dilemma, trapped between crown and conscience. In the storm that followed Anne's confession, the eyes of the nation turned to one man, Prince William. He didn't speak. He didn't post. He didn't blink. But his silence was deafening. As questions of King Charles's capabilities swirled, and Princess Anne's honesty shocked even her staunchest defenders, the pressure on William became unbearable. He was now the heir apparent, the bridge between a crumbling reign and a questionable future. And he was being asked to do the impossible: defend the monarchy without betraying his mother. "He's trapped," said a source close to the royal household. If he supports Charles, he appears blind to Diana's pain. If he sides with Anne, he undermines the throne he's set to inherit. Social media wasn't forgiving. Posts exploded with comments like, "William, where are you? Say something. For Diana. For us." But how could he? His aunt had just admitted she never loved his mother. His father was collapsing under the weight of public doubt. And his brother, estranged and distant, had warned the world about the family's emotional void long ago. "William's silence isn't weakness," a royal commentator said on Good Morning Britain. "It's survival. He's standing on a minefield, and every step could destroy the monarchy." Behind the scenes, William was reportedly in constant contact with Catherine, who advised restraint. They both knew the moment he spoke, no matter how carefully, it would become a global headline. The question now wasn't if he would respond. It was when and how hard the fallout would hit. Insiders say he's torn between two instincts: protect the institution, protect the memory of his mother. "He still visits her statue alone sometimes," said one former palace guard. "When everything goes quiet, he goes to her." William is not just the next king now. He's the emotional axis of a divided dynasty. And the clock is ticking. Because while he waits, another voice is rising. One that many thought had been silenced forever. Prince Harry. Harry's vindication. The outsider was right all along? Across the ocean, in Montecito, California, a man once mocked as the runaway prince watched the chaos unfold from a distance. But this time, Harry wasn't the rebel. He was the reminder. Everything Princess Anne confessed, the emotional repression, the silencing, the inability to show love, echoed what Harry had said all along. "The firm didn't protect us. It trapped us." Harry, Oprah interview, 2021. Back then, the world was divided. Was he telling the truth? Was Meghan exaggerating? Was the crown being unfairly demonized? But now, Anne had handed Harry the ultimate proof, and the public knew it. Harry was right all along, one viral tweet declared. He didn't leave to hurt the monarchy. He left because it wouldn't change. For the Sussex camp, Anne's statement felt like vindication wrapped in grief. It proved that Diana's pain hadn't died with her. It had been institutional, passed down like a secret script. "This is what Harry tried to save his family from," said a commentator on CNN International. Now, the same system is consuming itself. Even critics softened. The same tabloids that once blasted Harry now ran headlines like, "Was the spare right?" Anne echoes Harry's truth, and Harry's allies didn't hesitate to lean into it. Sources say the Sussex team is already considering a follow-up documentary, now with Anne's audio as a crucial piece of the narrative. What was once a personal memoir had become a movement, proof that the monarchy wasn't just flawed, but broken at the core. For Harry, it wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about truth finally catching up. "The cracks were always there," said a close friend of Harry's. Anne just gave them a name. And in doing so, she may have handed Harry the one thing the palace never expected him to have: the last word. The public reckoning, protest, pain, and power shifts. By the end of September 2025, the mood outside royal palaces was no longer quiet reflection. It was unrest. Crowds gathered outside Buckingham Palace, Kensington, and even Sandringham, holding candles in one hand and protest signs in the other. Some carried photos of Diana. Others wore black, silently staring at the gates. But many shouted, loud, angry, fed up. Signs read, "The People's Queen was never protected. Love is not duty. Diana forever. Charles never." What began as mourning turned quickly into a full-on movement. Petitions calling for Charles to step down gathered over 1.2 million signatures in just 4 days. Online forums buzzed with demands for generational change, for William to lead, and for the monarchy to reckon with its own past, publicly. The calls weren't just emotional. They were loud, organized, and unrelenting. What made it worse? The palace's refusal to say anything more. No press conference, no televised address, not even a photo of the king. That vacuum turned into fuel. Anne's confession had opened a door. Now, the public was walking straight through it, armed with questions, anger, and memories they never truly buried. And at the center of that anger stood Camilla, whose approval rating hit a historic low of just 18% according to a YouGov poll. Even those once loyal to the crown began to fracture. Military veterans called her statement a betrayal of unity. Former palace staff broke NDAs anonymously, describing an inner culture of cold obedience and emotional starvation. What had once been described as duty was now being exposed as decades of damage. The question wasn't whether people believed Anne. They did. The question was, what comes next? Because in the eyes of the public, something irreversible had happened. The myth of the flawless firm had shattered. The crown, once above reproach, now looked fragile, human, flawed, and maybe no longer fit for the time. Truth or treason? What comes after the confession? No royal confession has ever left a crater this deep. Princess Anne's admission, raw and unfiltered, tore open not just wounds, but foundations. And now, the institution itself stands shaking on cracked ground. Was it truth, or was it treason? The country remains divided. Some say Anne did what no royal ever dared: tell the truth at any cost. Others believe she crossed a line that even grief can't justify. But whatever people believe about her intentions, the result is the same. The monarchy has never looked this vulnerable. Behind palace walls, there's no recovery plan. Charles is rarely seen. Camilla remains hidden. William is visibly uncomfortable. And Harry, for once, is choosing silence. A silence that echoes louder than words. The family isn't unified. It's scattered, cracked by confession, and held together only by ceremonial routine. But routines don't inspire nations. People do. And right now, that inspiration is missing. Parliament members are whispering the once unthinkable, that the monarchy may not survive another direct hit. What began as a family drama is shifting into a national reckoning. Newspapers across Europe and the Commonwealth have started calling it the beginning of the end. Inside the firm, trust is gone. Behind Anne's steel eyes, there may be regret, but there's no retreat. She said what she meant, and she knows what it cost. For decades, the monarchy thrived on polished silence, on sweeping pain under tapestries and smiling from balconies. But one woman stepped off script. One woman broke ranks. And now, the silence is shattered. The story is out, and the world is watching. Not for their next speech, but their next mistake. This wasn't a scandal. It was a seismic shift, a quiet explosion in a golden cage. Whether it was truth or treason doesn't matter anymore. The damage is done, and history will decide the rest. With one unscripted confession, Princess Anne may have triggered the monarchy's biggest crisis since Diana. Charles's reign is no longer secure, and the nation is demanding answers. Truth has cracked the crown. Now, only one question remains. Can the monarchy survive when its own blood no longer believes in it?